Here is our top 10 movies which changed filmmaking forever. Number 10. Taxi Driver. If there was one thing Taxi Driver was to do, it was to usher in the age of method acting. Scorsese, the director, took a small part himself. He can be seen here sitting in the back of the taxi driven by actor Robert De Niro. What was unusual about this movie was the fact that both De Niro and the scriptwriter Paul Schrader spent time working as taxi drivers just to get a feel for the role. Number 9. Apocalypse Now. What is so special about this scene, I hear you ask? Well, believe it or not, it's because it's actually real. While making the film Apocalypse Now, Martin Sheen developed a great need for alcohol and effectively became an alcoholic. In the scene where he punches the mirror and cuts his hand, he is actually very drunk, but Coppola suggests they continue to roll, which they do. Unfortunately, only days later, Martin Sheen had a massive heart attack. He survived, incredibly returning to the set 6 weeks later very sober. Although Sheen was not the original dream castee for the role, in a film depicting the futility of war, it is certain he made the character his own and turned in an epic, if not sobering, performance. Number 8. Cleopatra. Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, both of whom were in loving relationships, met for the first time on the set of Cleopatra. It was to create fireworks, and not just between the couple, but also in the global media. There is no doubt, looking back, it is easy to see how in love they were, but at the time it would be interesting to know how many actually knew. If there was one thing the film did, it ushered in a time of big spending. When they started to make the movie in 1960, there was a budget allocated of $5 million. By the time they'd finished and they'd released the film in 1963, they had spent up to or close to $44 million. In today's money, that would be in or around $350 million. Number 7. Modern Times. Modern Times was to be his first talkie, but Chaplin scrapped the script and made the film a silent masterpiece, and we're not complaining. After travelling around Europe and experiencing the Great Depression, Chaplin came across Gandhi, who was firmly against any form of modernisation. Although not totally against it, Chaplin agreed it cost jobs, and he felt therefore it created some forms of poverty. So he set about creating the film. What is incredible about the film is its early liberal connections. Writing in the Liberal News, the official magazine of the British Liberal Party, in October 1936, Willoughby Dewar observed, "Modern Times should be seen by every young liberal. It is a piece of first-class liberal propaganda." Number 6. Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction was the independent movie that launched independent movies into the stratosphere. Incredibly, there was initially very little faith in the script, some people calling the script itself crazy or mad. In the end, the budget was a measly $8 million. What it grossed was something incredible, just over $200 million. Another thing Tarantino was to do was to take the very typical beginning, middle and end of the story and move them around. Lots of people in Hollywood had used Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces as a typical storyboard structure for each movie. Tarantino took out the old rule book and ripped it up. Number 5. Dr. Zhivago. Dr. Zhivago was the book which should never have been, which made the movie which nearly never was. Made mainly in Spain, as Russia was out of bounds, David Lean brought together a stellar cast of people who in the end, under different conditions, might not have any part in the movie. The likes of Kane, Brando and Peter O'Toole shunned the chance to take the lead part, Kane even getting to the part of going through the dailies with Lean and proposing Omar Sharif. But it was the female performances which make the film. Julie Christie was exceptional, and her ability to play the young Puritan in distress is second only to her performance as the weather-beaten older version. The photography is Lean at his best. Number 4. The Graduate. Not even Dustin Hoffman thought he would get the role of the seduced college boy, but he did. Robert Redford and others were further up the list, but he was chosen in the end because he was actually out of place. Either way, it worked perfectly. Anne Bancroft, the seducer, was 35, and even though he was just 6 years younger when he played the part, he did it wonderfully. The scene we now know as very famous was very risque for its time. It depicted an older woman seducing a younger man. And although this became a mainstay of future movies, it was very risque for 1967. Number 3. The Bicycle Thief. A personal favourite of mine. For some, this simple film is the greatest ever made, and for others it is one of them. Either way, it's hard to fault. Great film photography is about capturing only what you need to and keeping it as realistic as possible. This film does this maybe better than any other. The cast is completely comprised of untrained actors and people found on the street. The film is shot on the street. Nothing is done in the studio. The storyline is basic and revolves around the poverty of post-war Italy, and although it may be classed as neo-realism, in truth it is a very simple gem, similar to the movie Once, made in Ireland, painted in the mind of a master, Vittorio De Sica, and made for very, very little. Number 2. Citizen Kane. Orson Welles understood the power of the press and the people behind it, and this is why Citizen Kane is so iconic, and why this photograph says everything about what a media mogul really stands for. Kane and Welles were making a statement. Yes, the script came from Mankiewicz, but only half of it. The acting, the direction and the selling of the project came from Welles. Mank also disliked Hearst because he made the writer feel like he didn't fit in, but it was Welles who was really bitter. He had found it hard to break into RKO after they plucked him from near obscurity after War of the Worlds, so this became his opportunity to show everyone what he could actually do. Few men braver ever graced the industry or the silver screen. Our number 1, The Great Dictator. Chaplin understood the system similar to Welles, except he was wise enough to choose a foe thousands of miles away and less likely to hurt his career. Citizen Kane and The Great Dictator had big boots to fill, as Gone with the Wind, the studio's first colour picture, had just been released the year before, in 1939. And fill them they did, to the brim. Chaplin was always left of centre politically, something which would later hurt him in a right-leaning America, but he also despised Hitler. The film boasts the greatest ever speech written or given in a motion picture, and it was delivered at a time when it was greatly needed. The stills shown attached to our piece should be an inspiration to those thinking along the same lines in today's society. History always repeats itself, so they say. Maybe it's time for inspirational filmmakers of the modern world to create a modern Great Dictator. Well, that's it for us, folks. Thanks very much for your time. Please hit the subscribe button or you can also share the video. We'll be back soon with more instructional photography videos, as well as another top 10 very soon.